Good Friday morning, guys. I'm Jerry Miller, and thank you kindly for joining us on Real Talk with Keith Smith. It's an absolute pleasure to connect with you guys through the I Love CVille Network on a show presented by Yes Realty Partners. Keith and Yonna Smith have a fantastic boutique brokerage that is just absolutely crushing it. They did fantastically well in 2025 from a production standpoint, and 2026 through the first quarter, they were ahead of 2025's production. So salute to Keith and Yonna. It's no surprise they're doing well. They've been in business since 1987, and they do business the right way, honest, communicative. They do what they say they're going to do. And you know, that's sometimes doesn't always happen in today's business climate. And one thing I'd like to highlight, I very much enjoy getting the handwritten notes from Yonna Smith. We get a couple of those every year, and there's something about a handwritten note that in today's digital world and digital climate carries a lot of weight. So I hope you hear that, Yonna. My wife especially likes the handwritten notes. Keith is in Las Vegas with Yonna at the Brian Buffini conference. I believe he's speaking on a number of panels. That's a pretty big deal. You're talking about heavy hitters in real estate. We have Neil Williamson in Keith Smith's place here, and he's the president of the Free Enterprise Forum. Neil Williamson is the type of content creator and the type of follower of trends and dynamics and governance in the economy that dictates the pace and tempo of the I Love CVille show. I am on the Free Enterprise Forum at least 5 times a week. I would encourage you to do the same. Judah Wickower is behind the camera. I think we should welcome a man that needs no introduction, Neil Williamson, to the program, the president of the Free Enterprise Forum, with you, the viewer and listener, encouraged to offer questions to Neil. Good Friday morning.
Good Friday morning. I'm glad you clarified that Keith's at a conference. I had heard he was at the Coachella Desert Concerts.
That would be hilarious if he was at Coachella right now, Keith Smith. I would pay to see some photos or videos of Keith. But you know what? He's got the type of millennial spirit where he would fit right in.
Of course he would.
He would fit right in. In fact, if I went to Coachella, I think I would be more of the outlier than Keith Smith, which speaks to Keith Smith being so likable. You, my friend, we love having you here. I sincerely mean this, are one of a handful of folks or platforms or content creators that help set the pace and tempo for our flagship show, the I Love CVille show. I sincerely mean that. Before we get into the new cycle and storylines that are local, how about the Free Enterprise Forum? I mean, I'm looking at an infographic here. 2025 production has been quite impressive for your organization.
We work really hard to try and bring public policy is not exactly the sexiest topic. So through dated cultural references and a bit of humor, we reach out and try and bring the public to the public policy discussion.
You 61 in 2025, the year 2025 calendar year, 61 appearances on either radio, TV, internet, or print. 80 blog posts. I mean, good night. 120 local government meetings attended. You're talking 300 plus hours. I'm going to have to get my calculator here. I'm going to go 300 divided by 40. We're talking nearly 8 weeks of in-person government meeting. 8 weeks.
8 weeks of, and that includes time that's done online, whereby I'm attending virtually because I'm maybe attending 2 meetings at the same time.
Unbelievable. So really, in a lot of ways, that could be even more.
It could be.
Because you're double, but you played it safe because you're double teaming there. 2,500 plus supporters and donors, Neil.
Yeah, and we need more.
That is absolutely amazing. Put in perspective why the viewers and listeners should support the Free Enterprise Forum.
Well, I believe public policy on the local level is where the rubber meets the road. It really is. The decisions that are made at the local level make the most difference in your day-to-day life, in the education of your children, as well as how your roads operate and how your public safety operates, how quickly the fire department gets to you. Those are all things made at the local level. And quite frankly, there is a news desert in the local level. And we have been trying desperately for 24 years now to highlight those things that aren't being covered in other media. But to remember, we are not journalists. I am an advocate. I'm an advocate for pro-business, pro-housing, pro-property rights. And I don't begin to compare myself to a journalist like Sean Tubbs or former journalist Allison Rabel. They are high-quality people that do things differently than what I do. I do try and add a little bit of fun to public policy because life's too short not to have fun.
I align with 90% of what you said personally as well. I have a lot of questions I want to cover for you. What's the future, do you think, of Free Enterprise Forum?
Free Enterprise Forum is rolling. We just inked a new deal this past couple of months with Greene County Content with the Piedmont Journal Recorder. We had a fantastic guy, Brent Wilson, work for us for about 10 years.
Volleyball guy.
Yeah. And he 2 years ago came to me and said, I'd like to retire again. And I said, sure, find your replacement. And about, 6 months ago, I ran into Chuck Jackson from the Piedmont Journal Recorder, and we had a discussion about a potential content sharing relationship, which would allow my good friend Brent to spend more time with his grandkids, which, God bless him, everybody deserves.
Who is behind the Piedmont Journal Recorder? Who's the owner?
The owner is Chuck Jackson, who is the editor.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. That makes me happy. It's a media publication not tied to Lee.
It is not tied to Lee. You'll see no Lee content.
That's awesome.
It is also focused on the outlying localities to the north, generally speaking.
Okay. Props to that. I appreciate anybody in the content creation that's in the for-profit or not-for-profit space. And I also concur what he said about Sean Tubbs. Sean is another guy that helps drive what we do here at the I Love CVille show. Vanessa Parkhill's giving you some props. Donna Schmidt is giving you some props. And we encourage the viewers and listeners to ask questions like the ones we have in front of me right now. I have some first that I want to get to. 1 cent real estate tax rate increase, Charlottesville City approved yesterday. Initially advertised as a 2 cent real estate tax rate increase. Thank the Lord they didn't go with 2. Still 1 I found a bit demoralizing. Some folks say, oh, it's just 1 cent. And then they try to extrapolate or calculate what that 1 cent will mean with each household and say, oh, it's just that. I push back on that saying this is in perpetuity. Basically in perpetuity. Of course they could cut. Charlottesville never does. On top of that, it's compounded by assessment increases, and it's further concerned by gasoline costs, grocery costs, floating debt, and all the other escalated costs that are going on right now. I'll start open-ended as I always do. 1 cent City Hall on the real estate tax rate. Where do you want to go?
Well, first and foremost, the item you mentioned with regard to the J. James program, which had Luke Neer was guest hosting.
Yep.
And I was driving into the office in that time slot, and I had heard what he had to say, and it required some correction in so much as there was the idea that we don't know what these things will be selling for. The way that affordable housing programming works, it is designed by the locality to be a certain number at the time that product is offered, and that number is based upon area median income.
Yep.
So no, we don't know what those will be, but we do know that they will be affordable to the 80% AMI area median income at the time when those units come online. So it's not a dig at the developer that we don't know what those things will be. That's the way the system works.
And he's talking about North Point right there.
That's the North Point piece.
That's the North Point, and we're going to unpack North Point for sure.
Sure. The other piece that you were asking about, which was the 1 cent piece.
Yeah. And this is the city.
In the city.
Yeah.
People ask sometimes about I corrected Jay James last week that we had the city councilor on who indicated that they had gone through their budget with a fine-tooth comb and found $1 million.
An extra $1 million.
Well, it wasn't exactly in that actuality clearly stated. That was an extra $1 million in revenue.
Yep.
They didn't cut $1 million from the budget.
Right.
That part wasn't really as expressed as clearly as it could have been. So
by the city first, I thought.
I agree.
And I think intentionally.
I don't begin to.
Well, those
judge.
are my words. But
I don't begin to judge, but the reality is that and the other thing that people get bent out of shape about is budget overflows or surpluses. Budget surpluses are good. Localities cannot deficit spend.
Explain what that means.
What that means is every locality's budget must be balanced.
Yep.
Income to costs, to expenses. And so when you have a surplus, that meant you budgeted appropriately. Now, in the Free Enterprise Forum view, a surplus should be in that 0 to 10% range, because that means you budgeted conservatively on your revenue, but you didn't over budget expenditure. It's just a balancing act. The same thing can be said about any tax increase is a balancing act. There are probably a dozen large property owners in Charlottesville that control probably 70% of the property, somewhere like that. I mean, in terms of valuation. Those folks are here for a reason. And the reason they're here is because most of them are businesses and are generating revenue off those properties. That means that those properties generate enough revenue to pay the costs of operation and the taxes and some level of profit. When that doesn't occur, those properties will be sold. Will they be sold for more or less? And will someone step in to pay the taxes? Balancing the tax burden with the desires of the civic-minded is always a challenge in every locality.
That was wonderfully said. That was a beautiful start. I think the challenge we have in Charlottesville City specifically, or in particular, is a clash of two different, you said civic-minded, two different mindsets of the citizenship. I've been here 26 years. You've been here longer than me. I've seen the ideology as it applies to the for-profit world in Charlottesville City shift drastically. And my clients, our firm is in the business-to-business space. As you know, we're offering consultation to other business owners. Business owners in the city are hesitant about practicing in the city, and they highlight elevated tax exposure. They highlight some of the activism that's going on, and we're not going to go down that road, but they highlight the interference of governance, which in a lot of ways is the opposite of the free enterprise.
Right, but that being said, there are specific things that are core government functions, and those core government functions and any other government function is determined by a panel of 5 people that are elected by the city.
Yeah, city councilors.
City councilors. And that's why we always say elections matter.
Let me ask you this question. This is a very pointed question for you. Economic development in Charlottesville City specifically, how would you characterize it?
I would suggest that economic development in the city is different, a different animal than economic development in other places. The city is just as unique as everybody else, but the city has a great environment for startup, bootstrapping businesses. That being said, they don't have a lot of places where that opportunity can be pushed. It is a great place for innovation. It is a great place for free thinkers. It's a place that attracts free thinking. The question is, where does that company grow? Go and grow to start, and then when they grow, can they stay in Charlottesville or do they have to leave?
No, they generally head to Almar. Okay, I'll try the question a different way. Economic development in Charlottesville City as led by the Economic Development Office at City Hall. How would you characterize it?
I would suggest that economic development in the city is overly focused on some of the tourism aspects, but underly focused on maximizing property values for property owners.
100%. It's 100%. I totally agree with that. And we've been punch drunk with tourism and the economic development that comes from tourism for so long that we've not had to practice a skill set tied to economic development in different realms. We've ridden the coattails of wineries and breweries and music and restaurants.
Oh, let's correct. How many wineries are in Charlottesville?
Well, okay, Albemarle County, but they're riding the coattails of the wineries in Albemarle.
Understood.
There's certainly a lot of breweries in Charlottesville.
Yes.
And
One less this week.
Unfortunately, South Street, RIP, 28 years for the, at one time, longest running brewery in Charlottesville, the first brewery in Charlottesville. These are my words. I'm not trying, you don't have to go down this road if you don't want to. We go back and forth. I just don't see a ton of economic development effort or nuance or innovation from that office in City Hall. And I don't see it with downtown. I don't see it with attracting new business. I understand there's limitations with attracting new business because there's only 10.2 square miles and there's limited building space. I get that. But I want to give props to someone who I know is a friend and you respect tremendously. Emily Kilroy in Albemarle County are crushing it. They are crushing it right now. They do have the advantage of having a huge, is it the 6th or 7th largest county in Virginia?
Yes.
Okay. They have one of the largest counties in the Commonwealth, right? They have the University of Virginia, right? But how is Emily Kilroy in economic development in Albemarle County able to do leaps and bounds more than what we're seeing from Chris Engel in Charlottesville City?
I believe that's like comparing.
You don't think it's a fair comparison?
I think Michael Jordan compared to Willie Mays.
Oh, so you're okay.
I mean, they're two different games.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, I believe that the city needs to do more and I will say I have known, I think three, maybe it's just two, but I think it's 3 economic development directors in the city. And I have been, I'm always intrigued by economic development officers in the city because you have a city council that may or may not have economic development as one of their priorities. I think they have 9, and I don't know that economic development is one of the 9.
No, you're right. They have 9 priorities, and Sam Sanders said one of the reasons we need to raise the real estate tax rate 2 cents is because you came to me with 9 priorities, which is a lot of stuff that you're asking of me, and we need more money, and one of the 9 was not economic development.
So I think that piece is, again, back to elections matter and how people understand what provides the revenue to support the social services that you want the government to provide.
Okay. Olivia Branch giving you some props. Kid Ashley watching the show. Jehu Martin, Bob Yarborough, Brittany Moore, Gunnar Cook, our friends over at Stanley Martin watching the program. Katie Mullins, she's in the game as a fantastic realtor. Daniel Kaufman, Matt Neese, Dr. John Shabe at Pro Renata, just to name a few watching the program right now. Mark Brown, questions for Neil, put them in the feed. I will relay them live on air. The 1 cent tax rate increase for city that's now approved. There was one speaker, there was 2 speakers that spoke against the 1 cent real estate tax, the tax rate increase. Nakia Walker and was it Richard?
It was Richard Spurgeon.
Yeah, Richard Spurgeon, who's a massive real estate owner locally. And he was extremely eloquent. And I'll give props to Nakia Walker. I thought she was eloquent as well. She spoke about the tax rate and how it's gentrifying the community members locally that are on the financial and social margin. Richard spoke in the public portion, the public comments portion, about what this is going to do to the economy and real estate owners like himself, about thinking otherwise of doing business in Charlottesville, basically. Was it a smart move, a 1 cent increase? A move of a necessity, certainly.
The Free Enterprise Forum is in a lovable place of never taking a position on a tax rate.
Okay.
So I can't say that it was a smart move or a dumb move.
Okay.
I will say that any move has an economic impact, and it's fair to say that that 1 cent increase makes housing less affordable by 1 cent per 100 for living in Charlottesville. That being said, how you use that money is generally the question when there's a tax rate increase.
Would you go ahead?
The other thing to state is that former Mayor Walker spoke again at the end of the meeting and really was passionate about her desire to see the tax abatement program for elderly and disabled expanded to include more people so that more people will have tax relief.
Yeah, I think not only should it be expanded, but I think it should be better marketed and advertised. I don't think a lot of folks even know about the tax abatement program. Richard Fox, watching the program right now. Would you make a Lloyd Snooks comments on legacy media that we should dip into reserves to keep a tax rate increase from happening?
Well, I always, when looking at such things, what are the reserves there for? And if you look at totally different organization, the Albemarle County Service Authority, for a long time, kept putting away money into a rate stabilization fund. They saw coming down the road significant increases in capital charges from Rivanna Water and Sewer. And they put this rate stabilization fund together, so they amassed money. The reason for that is so that your rates don't go through the roof when these bills come to due. So if you have that reserve, the idea to utilize it to minimize the peaks and valleys of tax increases, I think is not a bad idea.
Comments are coming in. This is an interesting comment that's come in for Neil. How much of the economic development or lack thereof is tied to the issues like Jerry talks about with the homeless and the houseless?
I think that economic development is driven by everything. And I think everything includes things like, well, this evening, President Trump's coming to town.
Yep.
That is a news item that will be covered, and Charlottesville will be covered as a place that he has come to hold a meeting. That's not a negative for some people, and some people it is. But the idea that the homeless is a part of it, the homelessness issue is a part of our city. We need to deal with it. But it's not a reason, one reason, it may be one reason, but it's not the reason economic development has headwinds.
Do your thoughts on the Holiday Drive shelter? And we now have, 3 nonprofits that are looking to manage a portion of 2000 Holiday Drive. We now know that it's 2 to 3 years out. We have Sam Sanders clearly stating on the record that this is not going to solve homelessness. This is not going to keep the homeless from being on the downtown mall or camping on the mall. This is not going to keep the homeless from camping on the Rivanna Trail. This is just going to be, what's the Robert Liberty? Let's kick them some money right now. The Silver Buckshot. This could be $20 million when it's all said and done. I will be personally happy if it checks in at $20 million, because I think it's going to check in well higher than $20 million. What do you want to go on Holiday Drive?
Well, I think it's important to recognize that Holiday Drive is just one part of the city's approach to homelessness and making homelessness rare and short-lived. There will always be some level of homelessness in the city of Charlottesville. Anyone that thinks they're going to eradicate it is out of their mind. The reality that I see is that it's yes and. Yes, we need to do Holiday Drive. Yes, and the city has kicked in, I think it's $3 million for the Center for Hope for Salvation Army.
Yep.
Yes, and there's a need for different kinds of shelters for different kinds of cohorts, families, folks with pets. All of those things need to be dealt with. I have not seen data to support what is anecdotally absolutely true, that homeless folks come to the place where the services are the greatest. I saw it happen, but when you look at the data doesn't support it. So I don't think there's a reason to not do it because, well, if you do that, more homeless people will come. I don't buy that for a minute based on the data. I've seen it anecdotally. My time in Santa Barbara, I saw a lot of folks coming because they were providing a lot of services. But you've got to look at the data, and I believe that we've kind of held firm with 250 or 200 homeless in our counts, our annual counts. That's bad. We need to do better. That being said, we'll never get the count to zero.
Brent Lillard watching the program, James Watson, Andre Xavier watching the program, Jimmy Evers on the show right now. I mean, you could conceivably ban public camping and ban the storing of possessions outside in public places. There are jurisdictions that disallow homelessness in their jurisdiction.
There are ramifications to that, and you need to determine what will be done with the people that you've decided are in violation of that, and you need to do it in a compassionate way I am not opposed to the camping ban. I think that was really probably one of the mismanaged political footballs that was out there. And because of that particular situation, as the way it rolled out, I don't think it's coming back for any time soon. I think it's more important to focus on how do we get the unhoused housed rather than how do we criminalize homelessness.
That's fair. To get the unhoused housed, then you're saying we need to build more housing. We need to build more shelter space.
I'm suggesting that there are two sides to the homelessness equation. And I'm amazed at the number of the homeless that are working poor. And that really troubles me. So you could say, well, perhaps we could get those working poor, those folks that are coming in, punching in and doing low-wage jobs, but they can't afford a house, and so they're choosing to live in their cars or whatever, find a way to lift them up, get them onto the housing ladder one way or another, get them in reliable housing, safe housing, and do that by increasing their economic vitality rather than increasing the number of beds.
Some would say the system's broken if housing is tied to area median income. Some would say that using a benchmark like AMI that continues to increase, it's at 125,800 for the 2020, that was the 2024 year. The 2025 number is weeks away from being released. Just instinct or speculation would suggest that the 125,800 number for the calendar year 2024 is going to go up.
Right, and that's a number for the Metropolitan Statistical Area, which is a 6-county area.
That's right. And using AMI that continues to go up, or a percentage of AMI to determine housing for those that are on the margin, some would say is a broken metric.
I would suggest that it's a metric.
Okay.
I don't know that it's broken. I don't know that there's a better metric. I certainly haven't seen one. It's
Okay.
a very objective metric.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think that the most encouraging thing that I heard from a local official from an outlying county that was suggesting there might be an opportunity for that outlying county to invest in the Holiday Drive property. Now, I can't imagine how large or small that investment would be, and this was an official, not an entire board saying it, but
Not tied to Albemarle County.
this person was outside of the metro area, so it wasn't tied to Albemarle.
Wow. That would surprise me why that would happen.
I anticipate it's because they don't have a place to take the folks that they pick up now for vagrancy, and it would provide them a location other than jail to take them if they had an arrangement. Okay. But I don't know that.
Devil's advocate with you. That would seem to concern me if I was a Charlottesville resident. That outer county jurisdictions would pursue investment into the Holiday Drive shelter to transport their houseless population to city limits.
I believe that's a discussion to be had by the localities that would be investing, as well as those localities that are choosing to receive the investment.
I 100% agree with that. I hope that's a discussion that's done analytically and not just through a compassionate rainbows and sunshine lens. Other topics I want to get to here include North Point, the developer in Albemarle County. Folks, you guys really should know what's going on here. If you're at all commuting on Route 29, the next 24 to 36 months, Route 29 and the commute is going to look very, very different. There's a number of homes, and I'll ask you the exact amount that are being built in Greene County, your county. We should talk about the number of homes that are being built around Polo Grounds and North Point. Back of the napkin, all combined, how many incremental units are coming on with those two areas, if you may?
I don't have a number for you on
Okay.
that. I will say that the Greene County portion of that is what you see from 29 is really the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
Further back are two projects, one by Stanley Martin and one by Southern, and those two projects are going to produce roughly 200, 250 homes a year.
Yep.
And
they cap out at what?
I don't remember the number.
Okay. I think it's between 2 and 3K.
It's probably about 3K. as you drive up 29, if you look to your right, after you've crossed the Greene County line, there's an area that's being developed right now. And right now, those products, while they have individual lots, fee simple lots, they are being marketed as build to lease. And that is a new thing in Greene County. Most are townhomes. Most of the product you're seeing come out of the ground right now are townhomes and apartments. And that has to do with the demand and price points.
100%. And it has to do with the fact that the developer of those townhomes knows that they can make some good money doing those townhomes.
Well, and it's very important to recognize if you have a project, and most of the projects, this may be a news flash for some folks, but most of the projects you see in Charlottesville coming out of the ground, commercial as well as residential, are not financed by the developer that's putting them together. They are financed on the open market. And that means money is coming from Texas to invest in Albemarle County. Why? Well, it's return on investment and profit. If that investor doesn't get that return on investment, they don't make that deal. So it's really important that we recognize that we must have profit as a part of that, because absent that profit, you can't have the return on investment.
100%. The folks that are in the for-profit space shouldn't be stigmatized like some folks are trying to stigmatize them. Their work is creating housing for people, and that's how it should be looked at. North Point, Polo Grounds, Greene County, I was told back of the napkin within 36 months we'd see potentially somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 additional housing units.
That may be a bit high.
Because you got 3K in Greene, roughly, back of the napkin.
But that 3K isn't coming online all at one time.
But over the next 36 months?
I would probably go 60 months on that.
Okay, 60 months. So you're saying 5 years on that. Give the viewers and listeners what's going on, a snapshot at North Point.
Sure. North Point has been, by means of background, North Point was approved by Albemarle County Board of Supervisors in 2006.
Right.
It was a long approval process. I sat through those hearings. Back in 2003, I remember they were started. 3 years to get approved, and it took about 15 years to get out of the ground. For those that really like to have fun, when you're stopped at the light for the North Fork, if you look to your right, there's a sign that says coming soon in 2009. And it was about a project that never got off the ground. That has to do with developer issues, economic issues, as well as permitting issues. So now North Point's out of the ground, and they've really only started a portion of what they're going to be doing. They have commercial in front of the residential that is right now visible from 29, and they also have another entrance that will now be moving. There'll be less commercial in that area, more residential. They have moved an elementary school site from where it was projected to be to a more environmentally friendly site and a larger site. I think it's 13 acres now, so that the school can have associated ball fields, et cetera. And they are required to get that all set up for hookups and graded, et cetera, at the demand of the Albemarle County School Board. They will not be putting a third entrance onto US 29, which was going to be up at the intersection, I believe, with the North Fork folks, because it's been deemed not necessary by a traffic study.
Yep.
That being said, traffic studies change over time. It's been 20 years to develop this property. So when you came back to change it to more residential, less commercial, they did a traffic study and proved via an objective traffic study, paid for by the applicant, but done by a licensed engineer, traffic engineer, that stamps it and puts his license on the line, his or her license, and indicated this is not going to drive enough traffic to warrant an additional curb cut for a road there. Plus, they don't have to then cross another stream bed, and it's less environmentally harmful.
The substitution of residential units for commercial units at North Point made a lot of sense to me. The commercial environment has got some headwinds. Clearly, we need more housing locally. Give them a snapshot of what's happening with the substitution of residential for commercial at North Point.
Sure. Back in 2003, 2004, there were many that were concerned about something called leakage, commercial leakage. They were concerned about Charlottesville's retail dollars going to short pump specifically. And the expression was, well, we need to capture some of that here, and we don't have land for that. And that was part of what North Point was talking about providing. That dynamic has changed. Amazon was a thing in 2003, 2004, but not nearly the thing it is today. And it is a reality that commercial space is overpopulated now, commercial and retail, while housing is needed because there's a government-created scarcity of housing in Albemarle County. And what I mean by that is their development area was set in 1971. Officially, it was actually Jimmy Carter's era, but it was 1971 the lines were first drawn. And it was really, they were drawn in a way to utilize the best science of the day to protect water quality. Science has changed too, and it's time to expand the development area.
The only thing we disagree about, I think really the only thing we disagree about, and we do in respectful fashion, is the development area. The voter appetite is not there to expand the development area, or it would have been done.
Well, I think that right now you have a 3-3 vote on the County Board of Supervisors.
Fred Missel's an extremely important vote here because you got Pruitt, Duncan, and Galloway that are pushing, expanding the development area, with Pruitt leading the charge. Sally Duncan is sitting shotgun in that Chevy Camaro with Mike Pruitt driving. Ned Galloway just got in the back seat, and they're trying to recruit they're trying to recruit Fred Missel to the party.
Well, and Mr. Missel is a friend. I've known him a long time, and he is representing a region
that does not want to do it.
The least populous region in Albemarle County.
Also the most affluent.
And the most affluent. Ivy doesn't want to have creeping residential growth. So what they're going to get instead is large lot rural residential zoning, and they're going to have their bituminous rural area carved up, and you're going to have school children going further on school buses, and you're going to have more difficult delivery of public services.
I think that will happen. You're talking sprawl is what he's talking.
I'm talking Ivy sprawl.
Yeah, that is what's going to happen.
Ivy crawls.
Ivy crawl, Ivy sprawl and crawl. But you know the missile vote. I'm going to watch Fred Missel, who is what 4 months, 3 months and change into his supervisor.
He is, and he's also vice chair.
Yeah, he is the most. We've been saying that on the show. That's the vote that's going to matter because Malik's not going to do it. Lepisto Kirtley is not going to do it. And 3-3, much to Neil Williamson's disappointment, means no action. Some would say, who said this? Maybe Ned said this. Some of the previous supervisors said it. 3-3 is a good thing because it means you have to work a little bit harder to get to 4. I'm of that mindset.
Right, and I'm of the mindset that you have to. If you had to get to 4, if it was 7 members on your council, on your board, it would still be getting to 4, and you might be able to do more than the 3-3 log jam that you end up with.
Yeah. Well, and let's we're talking about supervisors here. Mike Pruitt, who is leading this charge, he watches our content all the time. I have tremendous respect for Mike Pruitt. Welcome to come on the show. The Scottsville District Supervisor anytime he wants. I respect Mike Pruitt. I hope you hear what I'm saying here. At a recent supervisor meeting, Mike Pruitt, he reminded me of an auctioneer with what he was trying to do with the tax rate. He first started with, was it personal property, and wanted to go as high as 29 cents?
No.
Did he start with the real estate tax rate?
He started with the real estate tax.
At 3 cents, right?
That he added, yes, I think it was a 3 cent, it was a 3 cent increase.
Yeah.
With dedicated funds to
affordable housing.
And I'm not positive that it was a 3 cent increase. I'm going from memory.
I'm pretty sure
here.
it was 3 cents.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that failed.
Yep.
And then he jumped it up for the personal property tax, which I actually find to be more regressive.
To 29 to start.
29 to start.
Yeah.
And I credit Ned Galloway because there is a time when you need to have that auctioneer mentality to know what you're going to advertise. Now, the rule is you can advertise anything you want, and you just can't go over it. So state the highest thing you'll be willing to perhaps support. It doesn't mean you will support it. And that's how you ended up with the personal property tax rate, because the Fred Missile vote was available at a certain point.
Yeah, Missile's vote became available at 15 cents, and I totally agree. The personal property is the most regressive of all the tax rate increases, which the board did not see it that way. But here's basically what happened. The Scottsville District Supervisor said, let's start with the 3-cent real estate tax rate increase. Anybody on the board, give me 3. Anybody on the board, give me 3. Anybody on the board, give me 3. All right, no one on the board on 3. Let's go to 2. Let's go to 1. Let's go to. And the problem with that is it was 4 cents last year. So this would have been 3 on top of the 4 from last year. Once he realized that there was no appetite, and I would have had to have, I think that Mike Pruitt realized before being the auctioneer on the real estate tax rate that there was not an appetite to do it. But Pruitt is an extremely intelligent person. He wanted to paper the record saying, I want to do this, so voters, citizens, the history, legacy can show that I wanted this for this cause. Once he didn't get the 3 cents on the real estate tax rate, Pruitt, he then went to personal property. 29 cents I was flabbergasted.
And where did that number come from?
Pruitt's 29? I don't know where that number
He was trying to reconcile the amount of money that was going to be generated by what he wanted to do with the property tax, the real estate tax, and get the same amount of money out of personal property.
Okay, fair. I should have known that. So what he's basically saying is he couldn't get the 3 cents on the real estate tax rate, so he tried a different avenue, go personal property, jump it to 29, and still get the same amount of money for what he wanted to do. That's what he said.
That's accurate.
He then got to 15. The auctioneer go 29, and then he even said on the record, "Look, I'm going to do this all day. I'll go from 29 all the way down," till finally Fred Missile bid at 15.
And he didn't actually go all the way down. It was an efficient manner in which to get to a decision.
Yeah.
Remember, you're trying to get 6 people to agree on something.
Sure.
And
4 people to agree on something.
4 people to agree on something. Yeah. And in the end, on the personal property tax, it was a 5-1 vote.
Which shocked me that it was
that was for advertising, not establishing it.
Right. 15 cents, why it's the most regressive kind of tax?
Well, the personal property tax, also machine and tool taxes for your businesses, is your cars.
Yeah.
So regardless of, there are some people in this community that are able to live without a car. Not many. And so if you need a car, and in order to have a job, you have to pay the personal property tax on that car. The supervisors paint it as these folks that are driving big, bold expeditions from Ivy out to somewhere else, and not the beat-up pickup that's riding into town each day to get to their job. So it's imperative to know that that tax hits everybody. Now, it hits the expedition a little more than it hits my beat-up pickup, but it does hit everybody. And property taxes hit everybody as well, because renters pay property taxes. This is something I've been saying for 10 years. Renters need to understand you are paying property taxes. As a property owner, you probably would agree with that.
Oh, renters are paying property taxes, and my tenants are paying my real estate taxes too. I'm going to be very straightforward.
That's what I meant, the real estate tax.
The real estate taxes are being passed to the tenants. The renters are paying my real estate taxes, and they're paying the personal property taxes as well. And I learned that from other landlords locally. This is,
that's the way the business is done.
That's the way this is done.
And so there are some folks in the new to the rental community don't recognize why they should care about it, because they're not stroking the check.
Sure.
They are.
Right. It's just indirectly. The personal property tax increases directly.
It is directly.
The 15 cents. How long have you been covering Albemarle County?
Since about 2001.
So 25 years.
Thereabouts.
Have you ever seen an increase of 15 cents on the personal property in 25 years? of that magnitude?
Not of that magnitude,
It's
but
eye-popping.
I also recall that there were reductions in personal property taxes during the recession.
Right. Was there a reduction in personal property during COVID?
There may have been.
There was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
There was. Because during the pandemic is when used car prices were outpacing new car prices, and it was broken.
Right, and I think that speaks to
Common sense.
and the ineffectiveness of our taxing system.
100%. 100%. You just said you've been doing this for 25 years, and you've never seen a personal property tax increase of 15 cents in 25 years of that magnitude.
As a percentage, I believe that's accurate.
That's bananas. You've been doing this for more than a generation. That is bananas.
That's bananas in itself.
It's demoralizing, and it's just further making the community homogenous and wealthy. You would think the supervisors would know that. You would think a Pruitt would know that, that was some of the most feedback I've ever received doing content on the show was from that. It boggles my mind, and in particular with the 4-cent increase last year. In particular with the assessments and what they've done since the start of COVID until now. And in particular with gas prices and all the other overhead that's gone up for households locally.
To be fair, when you talk about the other inflationary factors, those other inflationary factors impact government services too. Fire trucks don't run on fairy dust.
That's fair. That's important to emphasize. All right, we'll get to some comments here. How about Hank Martin watching the program? He says, presently in this age of AI, college students, even college graduates, are unable to find work at a pay scale equal to the education level they have a degree in. How do you insert vitality into the working poor that are homeless? You mentioned the working poor that are homeless earlier, Neil. How do you search vitality into this group? We're looking at $6 million for just housing. How much more to lift them onto a playing field of skills and equal pay? The $6 million he's talking about, of course, is Holiday Drive. $6.2 million. Yeah, $6.2 million to purchase. Folks, it's going to be another $14 million. If we check out of this project at $20 million, that's a success, which is terrifying to say. He has. What do you make of that question?
Well, I think that Hank has a very good point, but I also think that if you provide shelter and don't provide a hand up, you're wasting your time. You're merely boxing people into corrals and putting them up overnight. This homeless shelter that they're talking about is designed right now to include wraparound services, to include getting rid of some of the problems that some of the homeless have that are hindering them from getting onto the employment wagon. Frankly, I see some of the same people in some of the same places are median men that I think if you're going to do that, you could punch a clock. I mean, if you're going to be that regular and be there every day from 9 to 5, you could be punching a clock and doing X. And I will say that when I look into our community, I agree with the AI, college educated, this, that, and that. There's a whole swath of employment that is being challenged by AI. But there's no AI that's going to handle much of the hands-on retail restaurant needs that this community will continue to have.
Cashier certainly could be replaced and is being replaced. But you're talking about actually making the food, at least right now, no, you're right. And I'll add some color to what you just said. If the houseless shelter comes online and the corresponding policy of banning public camping or storage of possessions in public does not follow suit soon thereof, then the $20 million for the shelter is wasted.
I understand that position, but I am going to wait to see how things move forward before advocating for anything. But first things first, I think we need to get together as a community, do the Holiday Drive shelter, fund the doggone Salvation Army additional 50 beds at the Center of Hope, as well as look at other opportunities to eliminate or reduce homelessness in our city.
It's such a dynamic community. What are you, anything new do you want to highlight with AstraZeneca and biotechnology north of town? I've been correcting myself. I've said that the average wage for the 600 tied to AstraZeneca was $125K. Ned Galloway came on this show a couple of weeks ago and he said no. The $125K is the starting salary for the 600 employees at AstraZeneca and their world headquarters. So I'm now trying to emphasize that as much as possible. Starting salary, 600 people, AstraZeneca, Albemarle County North is 600 people. Anything new from your conversations with that project?
I have been fascinated trying to extrapolate the housing needs of those 600 people.
What does that mean?
What I mean by that is how many of these 600 people will be married, so let's take that as one, or be commuting, some sort of distance type thing.
Well, we can answer that.
Sure.
Okay, I would think of the 600, a large portion of them will be married because these are not entry jobs. So they'll be further along in their life cycle where they could...
What I mean by is married to another AstraZeneca employee.
Oh, okay.
So it reduces the household counts.
Understood. I took it as married, meaning if that partner they're married, are they also earning income, which would mean that household is making the 125 starting plus whatever the partner is making, which would jump the AMI.
We're going to see AMI jump. Now, remember, it looks back a year.
Of course.
So we won't see it for some time.
Right.
That being said, what we will see quickly is, let's say it's half need to come to Albemarle County for housing.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, or need to come to the region for housing. So that's 300 units that need to be available for people that have a starting salary of 125.
Without a partner that's working.
Without a partner that's working, put the partner that's working at half that.
Right.
And so now you've got 200.
Call it 200.
$200,000 family income.
Yeah.
What is that?
With 300 new people.
300 new people with $200,000 to spend annual income.
Yeah.
What can they afford to buy?
A lot.
And where will they buy it?
So this is the type of stuff that I love to do. I think people of that income bracket are going to target Ivy because of the schools, because they are credentialed, educated, a lot of them PhDs, qualified enough to get jobs of this financial compensation. So we know they're educated. They're going to prioritize schools for their kids because that's how they got to that point. They'll target Ivy first, then they'll go Crozet second. And if Ivy and Crozet, they can't find the housing, then I see it going to like Hollymead, Forest Lakes area, because then they'll prioritize proximity to work. And if that doesn't work, then maybe you start considering what's happening in Green, because the schools in Green are vastly improved. That's something my wife and I have a conversation all the time because we like to buy and sell stuff, and we like to time the market. That's how I see it playing out. How do you see it playing out?
Well, I wonder if some might say that aren't timing the market but have lived in Ivy for 25 years, feel forced out by the pressure of these folks. And I think that's a valid thing. But another side of that is they can cash out. They cash out. They bought 25 years ago in Bel Air, and now it's worth this much. $1.5 million, $2 million easy. They're moving to South Carolina to retire.
Right.
And they can play golf every day.
So I totally think that's what's going to happen. And I don't feel bad for that. I don't feel bad for that. That's how it works. Like, I don't feel bad for someone who's being squeezed out that's walking away with 10x return on their purchase.
But does it change our community?
Well, of course. I think our community, I think this community is going to be almost unrecognizable to what it is now. Because I will say this, where we're at now is unrecognizable to when I first arrived here. And that was, granted, that's 25 years. That's 26 years. Good Lord, I'm getting old. 26 years in August. The next 5 years, call it from 2026 to 2031, I think is going to be the biggest 5-year period of change I've seen in this area or experienced in this area ever. with maybe a close second once Charlottesville was getting on those media publications for the best place to live, and everyone started flocking here.
I think you're right in the short term. You've got longer term vision would suggest that when I-64 came through and we started seeing some serious, because there is no really good reason I-64 goes through Charlottesville. It was a political decision.
When was that, though?
That would have been...
That was in the 90s.
No, it was earlier than that, I believe.
Okay.
I really don't have the date on that.
Okay.
But and you also saw significant development changes and socioeconomic changes when Forest Lakes came online. That was before Glenmore.
That was Comer.
That was it was actually the
Or no, what?
it was
Kessler. Comer,
Kessler.
yeah. I can't
Comer's
believe I mean.
son-in-law.
Right.
Kessler.
We don't need to go down that road.
No.
It was
but
Kessler, yeah.
It was Kessler.
Yeah.
And then he turned around and did Glenmore after that.
Right.
And people thought Forest Lakes was the end of the earth. I mean, I talked to John Nunley, who owns Better Living. When they opened Better Living, that's now on Berkmar, but was on 29, it was the end of what was there.
You're saying so far away.
So far away.
Yeah.
And the majority of the community, present company excluded, don't consider the DoubleTree to be so far away because it's so far north of Barracks Road.
I knew you were going to do that. That's a zing at me when I make the comment that I try not to go north of Barracks Road. That's the first zinger. It took you an hour to get to the first zinger. I was waiting for it. I love the zingers.
The creeping ivy was an indirect
I
zinger.
know it was. And it was a zinger. It was a soft zinger. That was a direct zinger.
But the idea of our community changing is something that's good. One of the things you and Judah and others have been talking about of late is the number of restaurant closings, and
More coming.
And I'm curious what the normal restaurant churn is, because restaurants
Locally?
I mean, restaurants change. It's one of the things that people kind of expect. You see a churn. Now, you do have your mainstays that don't churn, but a lot of restaurants churn, and that rate is something that I wish I had a better handle on.
It's me too. I totally agree with that. It would seem, and this is us based on our feel for the market, we both have a pretty good feel for this. Just like you had a feel for Santa Barbara, you thought that as the homeless services upticked in Santa Barbara, when you lived there, more homeless came. That's a feel. Our feel, at least my feel, is that the churn is more aggressive now, and it's happening to more iconic ones that you would think could weather more of the headwinds because of their institutional success. The churn generally, or more often, is the ones that are peripheral, that had a concept that wasn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but we also see a large number of folks that have spread their wings and grown.
Well, yeah, Stefan Freeman. Yeah, you're talking
beyond Stefan. I mean, Hunter Smith, others that have overextended.
Yeah,
and
got ahead of their skis.
Yeah. And I think that as we try and learn from Icarus, the idea of flying too close to the sun is probably a bad idea.
Mr. Martin says Interstate 64 was 1969.
Okay, so 70 was pretty close.
Yeah, my estimate was way off. His was very accurate. Thank you very much for that, Hank. We appreciate that. Is there any intel or conversation that with Rivanna Future, Rivanna Station, AstraZeneca, north of town, that is not in the news cycle right now? Conversations that you've had that you could put on this show? Because I love that kind of stuff. Without breaching confidentiality and trust.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we work really hard on because we don't take positions on projects.
Sure.
And people tell us things that we learn things and we keep them close when they need to be kept close.
Sure.
That being said, there are interesting things going on around Rivanna Futures, properties that are on the market now that may be valued, undervalued, overvalued, depending upon what the market says, that are interesting to see how they or if they develop, because folks don't recognize Rivanna Futures includes a number of acres in the rural areas. and you really can't develop in those rural areas. Now, who controls what's in the rural area and what's in the development area? Oh, it's the owner of Rivanna Futures, Albemarle County. I would push that we probably need to expand the development area and include the Rivanna Futures areas as maybe a carrot to bring Albemarle County along.
Is Albemarle County selling the land to AstraZeneca? Is Albemarle County leasing the land to AstraZeneca? Is Albemarle County giving the land to AstraZeneca? Do we know?
Those that look closely at it probably know, and I have reviewed the documents and reviewed what Albemarle's position is. I believe it was a land sale, but I am not convinced of that because I didn't read the settlement documents.
Okay. So you believe Albemarle County sold land to AstraZeneca for them to build their world headquarters, as opposed to incentivizing AstraZeneca to come to Albemarle County by giving them land for free to build their world headquarters.
I don't know what they sold it for.
So it could be potentially one of these deals that we see or we hear about where it's, I'll sell this to you for $1, or I'll sell this to you substantially below market value.
Or it could be that it's a combination between that and tax abatement programs and things, other incentives that can exist via a performance agreement that has to be met on an annualized basis and is checked. Those performance agreements, to my knowledge, haven't gone through the EDA yet, but they may have at a time when I wasn't paying attention, but I watch pretty closely what they look at.
Right, and the reason I'm asking you is when Supervisor Galloway was on Real Talk a couple of weeks ago, I specifically asked him that question, and he two-stepped around it. And he was a master at two-stepping around. Big fan of Ned Galloway. Just want to, for the record, I saw the two-step, Supervisor Galloway. I thought you were very talented with that two-step. Hour and 10 minutes in, you crushed it per usual. Free Enterprise Forum. Support the Free Enterprise Forum. Offer some insight to what's going on at the Free Enterprise Forum.
Free Enterprise Forum really focuses on looking at how local government impacts local business and your business, and everyone who is a property owner should care how government interacts with business, because business taxes run the locality.
Free Enterprise Forum is the best, guys. I have an infographic here, 80 blog posts in 2025 on the Free Enterprise Forum, 61 media appearances for Neil Williamson. I mean, you're talking about 2,500 supporters and donors, 300 plus hours for Neil attending local government meetings. This guy is a beast. He is a workhorse. And Albemarle County, Charlottesville, and Central Virginia is lucky to have Neil Williamson in our community. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
I sincerely mean that. That's awesome. Awesome. Judah Wickower behind the camera, Neil Williamson. My name is Jerry Miller. This is Real Talk with Keith Smith. Keith is back in the saddle on Friday, a week from today. And then the I Love CVille show is up in 1 hour and 5 minutes. So long, everybody. Nice.